Hi, my name is Aaron and this is Old TV Cinema. Hollywood has a long and proud tradition of treating its biggest stars like expired coupons. One day you're the face of a hit show, the next your name has quietly vanished from the opening credits, and nobody bothered to pick up the phone and warn you. We are talking about actors who showed up on set, opened a script, or turned on their own television and discovered, along with the rest of America, that they were out of a job. Today, we are counting down 9 TV stars who got the worst kind of surprise in show business. And trust me, by number 1, your jaw will be on the floor. Number 9. Jackée Harry, 227. Let's start with a story that perfectly sets the tone for everything that follows. Because nothing illustrates Hollywood's casual cruelty quite like winning your industry's highest honor and then quietly getting shown the door before the trophy has even been polished. 227 was a sitcom set in a Washington, D.C. apartment building, following tight-knit neighbors navigating everyday life, love, and the kind of gossip that only thrives when everyone knows everyone else's business. It premiered in 1985 and found a comfortable home on NBC's Saturday night lineup, which back then was appointment television in a way that younger viewers honestly cannot comprehend. Jackée Harry played Sandra Clark, the glamorous, sharp-tongued, unapologetically vain neighbor who practically levitated off the screen every time she walked into a scene. She was magnetic. She was hilarious. And in 1987, the Television Academy agreed, handing her the Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. The first black woman to win that particular award, by the way. Let that sink in for a second. So here is the situation. You just won an Emmy. Your face is on magazine covers. Viewers adore you. By any reasonable measure, your position should be more secure than ever. And yet, behind the scenes, producers had quietly decided Sandra Clark needed to be scaled back. Nobody sat Jackée down and had that conversation directly. Instead, scripts arrived with fewer scenes. Colleagues mentioned things offhandedly. She learned her contract would not be renewed through industry chatter, not a phone call, not a meeting. By the time anything official was communicated, the decision had already been made and half forgotten by the people who made it. You win an Emmy, and the response is essentially, "Thanks, here's your hat." She landed on her feet, eventually co-starring in Sister Sister throughout the 1990s. But that exit remains one of the era's quieter indignities. Number 8. Lisa Bonet, The Cosby Show. The Lisa Bonet story is not just a firing story, it is a power story. And honestly, there is so much layered into this situation that it almost requires its own separate video. The Cosby Show dominated American television from 1984 onward in a way that is difficult to describe to anyone who did not live through it. Thursday nights on NBC were untouchable. Bill Cosby's Cliff Huxtable was America's dad, and Lisa Bonet, playing daughter Denise Huxtable, was the cool one, the effortlessly stylish, slightly rebellious daughter who marched to her own drum. Viewers loved her for exactly the qualities that apparently made certain people behind the scenes deeply uncomfortable. In 1987, Bonet starred in the film Angel Heart alongside Mickey Rourke. Dark, sexually explicit, and deeply unsettling, it had absolutely nothing in common with the warm, safe world of the Huxtable brownstone. Cosby made his disapproval publicly clear in terms that left very little room for interpretation. A relationship that was never apparently warm to begin with cooled to something closer to permafrost. Bonet moved over to spin off A Different World for a season, giving everyone breathing room. But when she returned to The Cosby Show after becoming pregnant, the reception was not exactly a welcome back party. What followed was a gradual, deliberate reduction of her presence that she did not learn about through private conversations or producer meetings. She read about it in the press, like everyone else. Trade publications were reporting on the cooling relationship and the scaled-back role before anyone in authority had the courtesy to speak with her directly. The billing changed. The storylines evaporated. Denise Huxtable was eventually shipped off to Singapore, mentioned occasionally in dialogue, and quietly forgotten. As exits go, it was the television equivalent of finding your stuff in a box by the front door. Number 7. Brett Butler, Grace Under Fire. Let me be upfront about something here. The Brett Butler story is messy. It does not have clean heroes or clean villains. It is the kind of Hollywood story that makes you feel about 4 different things simultaneously, which honestly is the only kind worth telling. Grace Under Fire premiered on ABC in 1993 and became, almost immediately, one of the biggest sitcoms in the country. Brett Butler played Grace Kelly, no relation, a working-class Southern woman rebuilding her life after escaping an abusive marriage, juggling 3 kids, a job at an oil refinery, and enough dry wit to fill a comedy club twice over. The show debuted to enormous ratings. Butler's stand-up background gave the character a lived-in authenticity that connected with audiences who were tired of seeing sitcom lives that bore no resemblance to their own. At its peak, Grace Under Fire was pulling in over 30 million viewers a week. 30 million. In 1994. That is a number that does not exist in television anymore, and probably never will again. Butler was not just a star, she was a phenomenon. Behind the scenes, however, things were deteriorating in ways that eventually became impossible to manage. Butler was dealing with serious personal struggles, including substance abuse issues that affected her behavior on set in ways that were widely reported and that she herself has spoken about openly in the years since. Writers left the show in significant numbers. Showrunners cycled through with an alarming frequency. The production environment became, by multiple accounts, increasingly difficult to sustain. What is particularly striking about Butler's situation is the way she described learning about the true state of things. The show did not end with a dramatic firing scene. It ended with a slow, institutional withdrawal. Producers began restructuring production schedules without her full knowledge. Scripts began arriving that reduced her presence in ways that were not fully explained. The cancellation itself, when it finally came in 1998, after 6 seasons, felt to Butler less like a decision that was communicated to her and more like a conclusion that had already been written and was simply waiting for the right moment to be announced publicly. The ratings by that final season had collapsed from their peak, a decline that was documented thoroughly and publicly before any private conversations about the show's future had apparently taken place. She found out, in meaningful ways, the same way viewers did, through the coverage. Grace Under Fire is largely forgotten today, which is a shame, because at its best, it was genuinely sharp television. And Brett Butler, whatever the behind-the-scenes turbulence, gave the character something real. She has remained open and reflective about that period in interviews, which takes a kind of honesty that not everybody in Hollywood is willing to offer. That counts for something. Number 6. Philip Michael Thomas, Miami Vice. Okay, I have been obsessed with Miami Vice since I was a kid. My older brother used to watch it in the living room, and I would sneak down the stairs to catch whatever I could before my mom sent me back to bed. The pastel suits, the stubble, the Crockett and Tubbs energy. To a certain kind of kid growing up in the mid-1980s, that show was the coolest thing on television, and it was not particularly close. Miami Vice premiered in 1984 on NBC, and it was genuinely revolutionary. The look, the sound, the pacing, all of it was unlike anything else on network television at the time. Don Johnson played Sonny Crockett, the undercover detective with the Ferrari and the alligator. Philip Michael Thomas played Ricardo Tubbs, his New York transplant partner. And in those early seasons, the billing was equal. The promotion was equal. The cultural footprint was, more or less, equal. Crockett and Tubbs. 2 names, 1 show. But star power is not always distributed evenly, even when it starts that way. Don Johnson's profile grew. His music career took off. His face was on more magazine covers. And as his celebrity expanded, the creative balance of Miami Vice began to shift in ways that were subtle at first and then increasingly obvious. Philip Michael Thomas began noticing the changes, the way you notice the temperature dropping before a storm. Fewer featured storylines, a gradual drift toward Crockett-centric episodes. And then the press coverage started. Entertainment reporters and trade publications began writing about the evolving dynamic on the Miami Vice set, about the shift in the show's creative focus, about where the priorities of the producers were actually pointing. Thomas was reading about his own reduced standing in Variety before anyone on the production had addressed it with him directly. Now, to be fair, Thomas has given interviews over the years in which his account of events is more nuanced than simple victim of Hollywood. He had his own opinions about the direction of the show. He had his own vision for where Tubbs should go. But the specific experience of learning your status has changed through press coverage rather than professional conversation is a particular kind of indignity, and it is one that several people on this list share. Miami Vice ended in 1989. Thomas's post-Vice career never quite achieved the stratospheric heights that seemed possible in 1985, which, given how magnetic he was in those early seasons, remains one of the genuine head-scratchers of that era. Hollywood has a way of not always knowing what it has until it has already let it go. Number 5. Shelley hack Charlie's Angels. Here is something I find genuinely fascinating about the Charlie's Angels story, and I think most people gloss over this part, but I think it is secretly the whole point of everything. The show essentially had a rotating door of angels across its 5 seasons. Farrah Fawcett left after season 1. Kate Jackson departed before season 4. The network kept swapping in replacements and expecting the magic to simply transfer to the new arrival like a software update. And what the Shelley hack story illustrates, better than almost any other example I can think of, is how catastrophically that logic can fail. Charlie's Angels ran on ABC from 1976 and was a cultural earthquake in its first few seasons. Farrah Fawcett's Jill Monroe became one of the defining images of the entire decade. When Fawcett left, the show brought in Cheryl Ladd as her younger sister, Chris. Audiences accepted the transition. The show held its audience. Then, Kate Jackson, who had been arguably the most grounded of the original 3, also departed. And for season 4, the network went in a completely different direction, casting Shelley Hack as Tiffany Wells, a sophisticated, cultured, upper-crust angel who had attended the correct schools and owned the correct handbags. Hack was a legitimate star. She had been the face of Charlie Cologne, one of the most recognizable advertising campaigns of the 1970s. She had the look, she had the pedigree. On paper, this made complete sense. In practice, audiences never connected with Tiffany Wells. The chemistry with Jaclyn Smith and Cheryl Ladd was strained. The ratings dipped, and the network, which had already demonstrated its comfort with the revolving door approach, began considering another swap. What makes Shelley Hack's exit particularly pointed is the way she learned about it. She did not receive a private meeting. She did not get a producer phone call in advance of the public announcement. She found out she was being replaced by Tanya Roberts by reading it in the trade publications. The Hollywood Reporter and Variety had the story before Hack had heard it from anyone at the network directly. Put yourself in that position for a second. You are sitting down with your morning coffee, you open the trades the way everyone in the industry does, and you read your own professional obituary. That is the kind of thing that does not leave you quickly. Tanya Roberts came in for season 5 as Kelly Garrett, and while the show made one more season, it wrapped in 1981, never having fully recaptured the cultural dominance of those early Fawcett years. Hack moved on to other television work and has spoken about the Angels' experience with a measured grace that, honestly, given the circumstances, shows considerable class. But the manner of that exit, the trade publication discovery, is the kind of Hollywood story that tells you everything you need to know about how the machinery of network television actually operates when it decides it is done with you. Number 4. McLean Stevenson, M times A times S times H. Alright, stop whatever else you are doing, because this is the one. This is the entry on this list that, every single time I tell this story, I get goosebumps, and I have told it probably 100 times. Not because of a firing exactly, but because of what happened to an entire cast when they opened a script and discovered something nobody had warned them about. M times A times S times H premiered on CBS in 1972 and became one of the most critically acclaimed television series in American history. Set during the Korean War, it followed the surgeons and staff of the 4077 Mobile Army Surgical Hospital with a blend of comedy and genuine emotional weight that network television had rarely attempted before. McLean Stevenson played Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, the commanding officer of the unit. Henry was bumbling, warm, easily manipulated by his own staff, and deeply lovable. He was the kind of character who made you feel safe just by being present on screen. Stevenson made the decision to leave M times A times S times H after season 3. He wanted to be a star in his own right, not a supporting player in someone else's ensemble. That part of the story he knew. He chose it. But what he did not know, what nobody in the cast knew, was how the writers had decided to handle Henry Blake's exit. On the day they filmed the final Henry Blake episode, the cast read the script together. And at the end of the script, they discovered that Henry Blake's plane, on his way home after being discharged, had been shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. Henry Blake was dead. The cast did not know this was coming. The script had been kept secret deliberately, specifically so that the actors' reactions would be genuine and unscripted. And by all accounts, that is exactly what they were. The cast finished reading, and the set went completely silent. Several cast members were openly crying. Alan Alda has described the moment in interviews as one of the most shocking things he experienced in his professional life. Now here's the part I want to make sure we sit with for a moment. McLean Stevenson left the show, believing he was stepping away from a supporting role into the spotlight. He left, and then the writers killed his character in a way that generated one of the most discussed, most replayed moments in 1970s television history. The episode, Abyssinia Henry, aired in March of 1975, and the switchboard at CBS lit up with viewer calls in a way that had not been seen since the Kennedy assassination coverage. Stevenson went on to headline a series of solo projects, none of which came close to matching the cultural impact of M times A times S times H. He never stopped working, but the career trajectory he had envisioned when he left the show did not materialize the way he had hoped. He passed away in 1996, and television lost one of its genuinely warm presences. I have never quite been able to shake the image of that cast sitting on set in Korea-themed costumes, reading to the end of that page, and going completely still. Number 3. Suzanne Somers' Three's Company. If there is one story on this entire list that gets told most often in discussions about actor-network contract disputes, it is this one. And yet somehow, every retelling seems to leave out the detail that I think is actually the most jaw-dropping part of the whole thing. Three's Company premiered on ABC in 1977 and was a massive, massive hit almost immediately. The premise: three roommates sharing an apartment with the male lead pretending to be gay to satisfy the landlord's lease requirements, sounds faintly ridiculous when you describe it in 2025. But at the time, it was exactly the kind of fast-paced, double entendre-loaded comedy that audiences could not get enough of. Suzanne Somers played Chrissy Snow, the sweet, gloriously funny blonde roommate whose comic timing was considerably sharper than her character was supposed to be. She was a breakout star, full stop. By season 5, Somers and her husband manager, Alan Hamill, decided it was time for a substantial salary increase. She was earning $30,000 per episode. She wanted $150,000, putting her in line with co-star John Ritter. The network's response was swift, decisive, and designed to send a message to every other actor watching from the sidelines. They did not fire Chrissy Snow outright. They did something more creative and more humiliating. Chrissy was written as having to go care for her sick mother in Fresno, which meant Somers was reduced to appearing for roughly 60 seconds per episode via telephone call, phoning in her lines, literally, from a remote location while the rest of the cast carried the episode. She went from co-star to effectively a recurring voice cameo. But here is the part that does not always get mentioned: the full scope of her demotion, the billing change, the reduction from featured performer to something barely above a guest. She learned about that through the network's press releases and through the coverage in TV Guide. The formal public record of her diminished role was published before anyone had walked her through exactly what the new arrangement would look like in practice. The personal fallout was significant and lasting. Joyce DeWitt and John Ritter, her co-stars, felt blindsided by the contract dispute and its aftermath. Somers did not speak to DeWitt for decades. It was not until after Ritter's untimely death in 2003 that she and DeWitt began the process of repairing their relationship, finally reuniting on Somers' own talk show in 2012. Three's Company continued without Chrissy Snow, cycling through replacement characters, never quite recapturing the original spark. Suzanne Somers reinvented herself so effectively and so lucratively through her fitness and wellness ventures that the whole episode eventually looked less like a career setback and more like an accidental launching pad. But the manner of that demotion, announced publicly before it was explained privately, remains a textbook case in how networks handle the talent they have decided to outmaneuver. Somers passed away in October of 2023, And with her went one of the sharpest comic instincts that network television produced in that entire era. The Chrissy Snow years are worth revisiting if you haven't in a while. I promise she is funnier than you remember. Number 2, Valerie Harper Valerie. The Hogan family. Now we get into the territory where the behind-the-scenes drama genuinely rivals anything that was happening on screen. And considering that the on-screen product was a warm suburban family sitcom about a mother raising 3 boys, that is saying quite a lot. Valerie premiered on NBC in 1986, with Harper in the title role of Valerie Hogan, a slightly neurotic, warmly funny suburban mother trying to hold her household together while her husband was constantly away for work. The show also featured a young Jason Bateman as her son David, which in retrospect feels like a television treasure that nobody appreciated fully at the time. Harper brought the same energy that had made her Rhoda Morgenstern, one of the beloved characters of 1970s television. The show found its footing, built an audience, and seemed settled. Then, in 1987, Harper attempted to renegotiate her contract significantly. She wanted a major salary increase and a percentage of the show's syndication profits. The producers, Miller Boyett Productions and Lorimar, said no. And when the negotiations broke down completely, they did not just let her go quietly. They killed her character, off-screen. In a car accident. Between seasons. No dramatic farewell episode. No goodbye scene. Valerie Hogan was simply mentioned as having died before the new season began. Here is the specific detail that I think deserves more attention than it usually gets. Harper learned the manner of her character's death the same way that millions of viewers did. Through a network press release and through TV Guide's season preview coverage. Nobody from the production called her privately before the announcement went out to describe how Valerie Hogan would be exiting the story. She read about her own character's funeral in the entertainment press. There is something almost poetic in the cruelty of that. You spend 2 seasons building a character, you have a salary dispute, and then you open the television coverage one morning and read that she died in a car accident while you were busy negotiating. Harper filed a lawsuit against the producers for wrongful termination and breach of contract. She eventually won a multi-million-dollar settlement, which in the context of Hollywood justice is about as close to a satisfying ending as these stories usually get. Sandy Duncan was brought in as a replacement. The show was renamed The Hogan Family, and it somehow continued for 4 more seasons. Valerie Harper continued working. She did television movies, stage productions, and guest spots across the following decades, and she remained one of the most genuinely beloved figures that era of television produced. She passed away in 2019, and the tributes that followed made clear just how deeply her work had connected with people across multiple generations. That multi-million-dollar settlement did not erase the indignity of reading about your character's death in the morning paper, but it was something. Number 1. Delta Burke Designing Women. And here we are. The one that made me actually put my research notes down and stare at the ceiling for a while when I first pieced the full timeline together. Because the Delta Burke story is not just a firing story. It is a story about what happens when a show builds its identity around a specific kind of talent and then decides, for reasons that were never fully or satisfyingly explained, that the talent is the problem. I'll be honest, when I first came across the full account of how this played out, I was convinced it couldn't possibly be true. I had to go verify it myself, cross-referencing multiple sources, because the sequence of events seemed too calculated to be real. Designing Women premiered on CBS in 1986, and was, at its best, one of the sharpest, most unapologetically funny sitcoms on network television. The show followed 4 women running an interior design firm in Atlanta, and the writing had a political edge and a genuine wit that set it apart from the softer comedies of the era. Linda Bloodworth Thomason and Harry Thomason created something that felt genuinely different. Delta Burke played Suzanne Sugarbaker, a former beauty queen turned self-styled steel magnolia with the fashion sense of a Bourbon Street parade float and the self-awareness of someone who had fully and deliberately decided that self-awareness was overrated. Suzanne Sugarbaker was one of the great sitcom characters of the 1980s, not because she was likable in a conventional way, but because she was specific. She was a type rendered so precisely and performed so fully that she transcended type entirely. Burke was doing something complicated with that character, and the audience felt it, even if they could not have articulated exactly what. Behind the scenes, across 4 seasons of significant ratings success, things were deteriorating. The tabloid coverage focused heavily on Burke's weight, framing the narrative in ways that were reductive and cruel in equal measure. But the real story, as Burke herself has described it, was a workplace environment that she found hostile, a creative partnership that had curdled, and a production dynamic in which she felt increasingly unsupported and undermined. The clashes between Burke and the Thomasons became industry-wide knowledge. The tension spilled into the trades, and in 1991, the decision was made to fire her. Burke reportedly learned the full, confirmed, official nature of her exit, the way that Hollywood so often delivers its hardest news. She saw the revised cast listing published in a trade publication. The formal announcement of the new season's lineup, without her name attached, was the confirmation she received that the discussions and disputes had concluded, and the conclusion was not in her favor. Think about what that means in practice. After 4 seasons, after an Emmy nomination, after making Suzanne Sugarbaker, a character that people quoted and imitated and genuinely loved, you find out you are gone because someone filed a press release. Designing Women continued for 2 more seasons without Burke, and without Jean Smart, who also departed at the start of season 6. It never recovered its original momentum. The chemistry that had made those first 4 seasons work was not something that could be reproduced by swapping in new cast members, however capable. The show limped to a conclusion in 1993 and has been remembered, somewhat unjustly, primarily through the lens of its internal controversies, rather than the genuine quality of its best work. Burke returned to the character of Suzanne Sugarbaker for a spin-off called Women of the House in 1995, which reunited her with the Thomasons in what seemed like a reconciliation of sorts. It struggled to find an audience and was canceled after 1 season, with its final 4 episodes eventually airing on Lifetime after CBS declined to continue. Even the reunion could not fully recapture what had been lost. What I keep coming back to when I think about the Delta Burke story is the complete disconnect between what was happening on screen and what was happening behind it. On screen, you had one of the defining comedic performances of that decade. Behind it, you had an environment so fractured that the person delivering that performance was learning about the end of her tenure from the morning trades, rather than from the people she had spent 4 years working alongside. Hollywood has always been comfortable with that kind of gap between what it shows you and what is actually happening. But occasionally, you come across a story where the gap is wide enough that you cannot look at the finished product quite the same way afterward. The Delta Burke story is one of those. Designing Women at its best remains wonderful television, and Suzanne Sugarbaker, the character, remains exactly as funny and specific and alive as she was in 1986. But the story of how it ended is one of this era's clearest illustrations of an industry that has never quite figured out the difference between a contract and a human being. And that is our list. 9 television stars who found out they were fired by watching the credits, reading the trades, or opening a press release instead of receiving the direct, professional, basic human courtesy of an actual conversation. Now look, some of these people were difficult. Some of them made demands that producers found unreasonable. Some of them had personal struggles that made production genuinely complicated. None of that changes the fundamental strangeness of an industry that routinely communicates its most consequential decisions through publications and billing changes rather than people. What strikes me most, having spent a significant amount of time with all of these stories, is how consistent the pattern is. Across different networks, different decades, different genres, different levels of star power, the mechanism is the same. The decision gets made, the paperwork gets filed, the press release goes out, and somewhere in Los Angeles, an actor finds out their professional life has changed by reading about it the same way a stranger in Ohio does. Television owes most of these people more than it gave them. A few of them got their money back through settlements and lawsuits. Most of them just got the lesson that this business will use you beautifully, and then let you find out you are done the same way everybody else does. If you enjoyed this deep dive, do us a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to Old TV Cinema and tap the notification bell so you are first in line when we drop the next one. We have some stories coming up that I genuinely cannot wait to share with you. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these exits shocked you the most. I read every single one. Until next time, this is Aaron, and this is Old TV Cinema. Thanks for being here.